Final Fantasy, just the name alone brings up nostalgic memories in the minds of many, many gamers spread all across the globe. From the very first game in the series all the way through at least number 12, most of these games are held in extremely high regard by critics and fans alike, and for good reason. However, the first one came out more than 20 years ago at this point, and that's a lot of time for this game to age. Has it aged well, however? I would say both yes and no. Let's take a look. There are 4 crystals representing earth, fire, wind, and water. And these 4 crystals are no longer lit. They are being corrupted. And it is your job to find out what is going on and why and how you can fix this. Because of the corruption of the crystals, the seas are raging, the wind is out of control, and the land is corrupting and not growing anything. There's a prophecy in this world that 4 warriors of light will step forward with orbs in their hands, and they will use them to reignite the crystals of the land and set everything back in balance. At the very beginning of the game, these 4 warriors do in fact step forward. At the very beginning of the game, they meet the King of Cornelia, and they are given a quest to find and seek out the knight gone rogue Garland, who has kidnapped the princess, the king's daughter. From this point on, the story and world expand greatly as you gather up new methods of traveling from one place to another, as well as visit new towns and new dungeons and new people to talk to. But first you have to start from the very beginning. The characters in this game, the ones you call the Light Warriors, are all blank slates. You pick their names and you pick their classes from one of 6 classes. Those classes are the Fighter, the Thief, the Blue Belt, the Black Mage, the White Mage, and the Red Mage. The Fighter focuses entirely on melee combat using weapons such as axes and swords. The Thief has the ability to steal items from enemies. The Blue Belt focuses entirely on hand-to-hand combat and really doesn't use weapons. The White Mage focuses on healing magic and magic that enhances your party, such as haste. The Black Mage focuses on destructive magic and anything that damages the enemy. And the Red Mage is kind of a jack of all trades, but not a master of any. He's a capable fighter in combat. He can use a sword, there's a few shields that he can use, and he can get up to level 7 magic spells. But he is not as good at any of these as a Black Mage, a White Mage, or a fighter would be. Still, he comes across as an incredibly useful damage dealer or spellcaster. The first thing you need to do in this game is select your party and give them all names, and pick a party that would best suit your style of play for these kinds of RPGs. Gameplay-wise, Final Fantasy is fairly simple actually. You will walk throughout the world going from one place to another, such as towns, and talking to people within towns, or dungeons, and fighting things throughout the dungeon and trying to obtain some kind of object or reach the crystal within. Along the way, you will run into a wide variety of random encounters, where you will fight a wide variety of enemies. This is where the vast majority of your time will be spent in this game, is walking around in dungeons and fighting random encounters. Combat in this game is actually fairly simple. It is turn-based. You take turns. Your enemy attacks, you attack. Your enemy attacks, you attack. You go back and forth with each turn, and it will all end, and then it will wait for you to input commands of your 4 characters, and it will begin again. You have a number of basic commands at your disposal within battle. You can use items, you can equip items from within the battle screen, you can use magic to cast either on enemies or on your allies, depending upon the type of magic that you're casting, or you can just flat out attack the enemy. You pick commands for each character class and watch them execute in battle. It's really that simple. There is a lot of strategy and nuance to this, such as hasting your party, casting null ice, null fire, null wind, or anything like that on your party to null the effects of enemy spells, and choosing the right kind of magic to cast against enemies to see what they are weak against and what they're strong against. Some enemies will be stronger against certain types of magic. For instance, if you are fighting a fire enemy, there's a very good chance that he will be weak against ice attacks and strong against fire attacks. Use this knowledge to your own advantage as you play throughout the game. Gameplay-wise, it holds up okay for the most part. The battles are fairly quick and fun, but they are also very, very simple, so a lot of the more complex battle mechanics from later Final Fantasy games or other RPGs of this type just aren't here. You have to remember that this game was actually built in the 80s originally, so you're not going to get a lot of the modern flair on it. This also means that the encounter rate can be infuriatingly high at times. This and the fairly dated mechanics are two ways that it doesn't hold up exceptionally well, but the mechanics that are here work just fine. What you're actually looking at here is the PlayStation version of this game for Final Fantasy Origins, and the Final Fantasy Origins versions of this game was completely rebuilt from the ground up. New sprites, new backgrounds that all look hand-drawn, a whole lot more on-screen color. I mean, it's a massive improvement over the NES original. These sprites actually hold up pretty well. They still look pretty sharp today, as you can see, and the backgrounds look fantastic. Graphically, this game is gorgeous, and this holds up a whole lot better than the NES original did. It also holds up quite a bit better than the 3D PlayStation Final Fantasy games because of the 2D sprite work and how well it is done. This would be updated further for the PlayStation Portable version of this game, so this is not the best looking version of Final Fantasy 1. The PlayStation Portable version comes with updated sprites that are animated better and look even better than they do in this game. The music was also touched up for this version as well. The original music was 8-bit beeps and boops, as you might expect from any original Nintendo game, and it was good. But there was limits on how much music they had. So, for example, you get boss fight music in this game that you didn't get in the original game. In the original game, you just got the same theme for boss fights that you did for any other battle. There is more music here, and it all sounds much richer and much more full and much more beautiful than the NES original because of this. It really puts the PlayStation sound to good use. This is a beautiful sounding game, and you will not be disappointed in this soundtrack at all. Although Uematsu did some better work later on, this starting point is an excellent one. Other than that, it made a number of other tweaks. In the version of it that I played, the biggest tweak that it made to the gameplay is it has auto-targeting. In the NES original, if you targeted an enemy and it died, and then you targeted an enemy with 2 or 3 characters after that, they would attack a blank space. They don't do that in this version, so if you target an enemy with all 4 characters and it dies after the first character's turn, the other characters will randomly select from another enemy on the field to attack. This is a huge change and means you don't have to pay quite as much attention when you're selecting targets, although you will want to pay attention when you are selecting targets because some enemies you'll want to get rid of faster because of the abilities and spells and attacks that they might have that can deal great damage to you and your party. Most of the other gameplay changes are actually to an easy mode that came with this version of it, where in this easy mode you get more experience and more gold from random encounters than you do in this version. In this version, saving up money at the very beginning of the game and leveling up is pretty tough, honestly. It takes a while and you seem to get very little reward at the very beginning of the game for all the effort that you put into leveling. So you can spend a couple of hours just to get to level 5 or 6 or something along those lines. And the easy mode really eases up on this. The other thing it does is the original NES version and the hard mode on this version that I played for my Let's Play use spell charges, a concept passed over from Dungeons & Dragons, where every single day you have a set number of spell charges, and the only way to recharge your spell charges for each individual spell is to sleep at an inn. This means that you'll go into a dungeon and have a set number of casts for each individual spell in your arsenal, and once you run out of that, you're out of luck. You get a basic potion as well, and once you run out of those, you have to start using your healing spells, and those can run out pretty quickly as well. So you really have to be conservative with them if you want to make it through some of these longer dungeons in this game. it can be very, very tough at times, and it can be very, very unforgiving. Easy mode, however, replaces this with the more traditional mana system seen in most of the other Final Fantasy games. Instead of spell charges, you have pools of mana, and each spell costs a certain amount of mana to cast, and you can keep casting it until you run out of mana. This allows for more casts of the spells, especially once you get to higher levels and get more mana. This results in an overall easier experience on getting through this game. So take your pick on which kind of Final Fantasy playstyle you really want for this game. Do you want the easier style with a more traditional Final Fantasy type thing, or do you want to go old school Dungeons & Dragons style and have spell charges that you'll get 9 at the most on any given spell? If you're going into this particular Final Fantasy with the idea that you're going to get the same great storytelling that games such as 4, 5, 6, 9, 12, or Tactics give you, you're barking up the wrong tree here. This was an NES game, so at the time, this had tons of story in comparison to everything around it. Every single game at that time had a basic setup that's like, okay, you have your basic backstory, now go do the mission. This didn't do that. This said, okay, we're going to start you off by saving the princess, and then you have a whole huge quest after you save the princess that we're going to put you through. It's going to take a good 30 to 40 hours for you to get through. We're going to make you earn this game's ending, and there does throw you for a loop at the end. Whether the loop the game throws you for at the end of the game makes actual sense is highly debatable, but at least it's got something at the end to hook you in for the final dungeon of the game. But this game has no characters that'll be memorable to you. It has no villains that'll be memorable to you. It has no character development for any of your 4 characters or any of the characters within the world. Every single character you talk to is going to spit out 3 or 4 lines of dialogue, and that's after this was expanded on the dialogue for this. There are some cool cutscenes that are added into this that I don't want to spoil for you that are kind of cool and kind of memorable. But they really don't expand on the story at all. They just expand on events that happen in the game as all they do. They show you the event, where the original game is just like, you went there, you did that, and now you can go do this other thing. Now it's more like, you went there, you did that, now you get to watch a cool cutscene as your reward, and then you can move on into the game. It's cool that they added that, but if you're looking for story depth, look somewhere else. The story in this game is another aspect in which it has not aged well. But it has aged well graphically. The sound is gorgeous. That has aged exceptionally well as well. The gameplay has aged fairly. It's a decent, if kind of standard and bare bones by today's standards, RPG. But getting to select your 4 characters at the beginning of the game and play with different classes and whatnot gives you a different experience and gives you replay value, so that has aged well as well. So is the original Final Fantasy all that it's cracked up to be? Well, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that this is still a good game and a damn good beginning to the series. No, in the sense that if you've played later games in the series, you'll notice that there's a lot missing from this, and that a lot of aspects of it haven't aged particularly well. So it's kind of a mixed bag nowadays. I would recommend giving it a try. I think everybody should play it at least once if you happen to be a Final Fantasy fan, because you should know your roots and you should know where the series started and how far it has come since then. This is a relic. It is very innovative and a big deal, and a huge stepping block for RPGs in general, but going back to it is not the easiest thing in the world. Still a good game if you can get past the fact that it's kind of rough nowadays. Thank you everybody for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe down below. That would be greatly appreciated, and I will talk to you guys next time. Thanks everybody, bye.